Before watching this video, please know I actually cover the entirety of the game, so before damaging your lucid dreaming virgin eyes and ears, please consider buying the game for yourself. Links to where it is available will be provided in the description. Remember, support your friendly indie developers. Lucid Dreaming is a game released by indie developer Tall Story Games and was actually a game that caught my eye, something I actually backed on Kickstarter in early 2021. Lucid Dreaming stars young titular protagonist Lucy, a young girl who suffers from serious night terrors to the point she's as sleep deprived as a YouTuber. It's not very easy now, is it, Lucy? And speaking of difficulty, let me just tell you, lucid dreaming is just as incredibly difficult as it is incredibly British. Some of the puzzles in the game are absolutely devious. For the most part, they are pretty logical moments where you're like, oh, I'm a Muppet. But then you get your odd few that are just oh so slightly infuriatingly difficult. The game takes place both in the town of Bickington, as well as the hyperactive and fantastical imagination of Lucy's dreams. Unfortunately for Lucy, she keeps having the same nightmare over and over, a dream of plummeting to the earth. And it's the player's job to help Lucy receive a decent night's sleep, which is a big ask from someone like me who can't even manage that for himself. Overall, the main goal of lucid dreaming is to help resolve Lucy's nonsensical sleep schedule. But what's that? Did someone say murder? That's right. In what is a game I expected to just be a light-hearted jaunt trying to help solve a young girl's nightmare problems, I suddenly became Angela freaking Lansbury trying to resolve a murder from 10 years prior, which seems to be related to Lucy's latest bout of insomnia, and also seems pretty inappropriate for someone as young as Lucy. Oh, and on the subject of inappropriate, it's also worthwhile talking about how the game has a little bit of bad language in it. But that's easily resolved since the creator made a button to help clear up some of that foul language, so that you can snuggle in with your young little babas, give them a little peck in the forehead and play together as you try to resolve the foul and grisly murder of one of the town's most beloved and prominent figures. It's a family bonding activity, people. In order to help combat the incoming nightmares, Lucy uses a psychology book where she learns how to make a dream box. It also splits into different chapters which each signify what chapter we're in, I suppose. The dream box is an important part of lucid dreaming as it helps impact the direction of her dreams, opening different dreams for Lucy to sleep in and allowing her to explore rather than perilously fall into an anxiety-ridden nightmare. Okay, good. Game closed. Bye bye. But no! We need to help Lucy overcome her own dreams without the dream box. By tinkering around with a few combinations, Lucy can change certain aspects of her dream, such as where it is through putting in a specific book, or by adding one of two stuffed toys she encounters, one of which being her faithful companion, Mr. Fumble, who actually turns out to not quite have much faith in Lucy. And the other is her new best friend, Duckzilla over here. Friendship ended with Mr. Fumble, now Duckzilla is my best friend. In total, there are 4 different dream worlds which typically follow the logic of the psychology book, with there being a world for comedy, which is a comedy club that seems to be entirely for Venus flytraps, which is quite honestly an untapped market, as well as a bakery world with a plethora of bread, which sounds ideal on paper until it starts to get that awful mould. And finally, there is a seaside dream filled with dreadful rat bastard seagulls and a more calming, horror-themed castle. Not only is Lucy faced with the wide-open inner machinations of her own mind, she also has the town of Bickington to explore, meeting with many different characters, including Woody, an ex-police officer voiced by Monkey Island legend Dominic Armato. And appropriately enough, Woody over here is a food critic. How appropriate. you fight like a cow. You can absolutely tell they had a fun time once they got him on board, and that's something that is so great about lucid dreaming. It's fun. Lucid dreaming is like the absolute love child of someone so entwined in the early 90s, featuring as many pop culture figures as humanly possible that Lucy can cram on her shelves, while also standing strong in its own presentation. To begin with, Lucy is confined entirely to her house, although after repairing her bicycle, she can jet off to areas in town of importance to her quest, to besting her nightmares. Although repairing her bicycle is in itself a bit of a hassle. Earlier I described Lucy Dreaming's puzzles as deviously tricky at times. The reparation of Lucy's bicycle wheel is just one of those tricky moments that will leave you scratching your head raw until you reach the brain. Believe me when I say that this is in fact a good thing. It's difficult, and the game doesn't exactly hold your hand with any hints. While the solution of using a pufferfish seemed like the most obvious answer, it somehow became a completely different puzzle in itself as I spent probably an embarrassing amount of time wandering around trying to use the pufferfish on every conceivable item. Eventually, I had a eureka moment when I realised the doormat was the solution of all things. However, in truth, I only realised this by using the game's hotspot highlighter, which I suppose is its own version of a hint system. If it's something that Lucy needs to use at some point, then it'll show up with a little circle so that even the most dim-witted of us adventure game players can see it. Especially me. Lucy's dreams are also pretty difficult, although the initial dream is far more simplistic. As mentioned, this is a comedy club for plants, and it just so happens to be open mic night, so of course, we're going to be channeling our inner Seinfeld.
Why don't carnivorous plants like wearing trousers? Because their flies keep getting stuck.
In her dreams, Lucy's inventory completely changes from what she has in the awake world, although her inventory carries throughout the different dreams that she has. At the bar, Lucy receives a pinch me drink, which is how the player can exit out of dreams if needed. And yet believe me, sometimes it's needed, as Lucy sometimes needs to travel between different dreams in her quest for a humble night's sleep. The prize for the comedy club performance is a fly, which allows Lucy to fly safely to the ground, although this proceeds to lead into yet another nightmare, being chased by what appears to be a giant dinosaur. In order to circumvent this, the book indicates that Lucy should consider breaking bread with the enemy, which we choose to take literally. The second dream is accessed by winning a local jam contest at a fair, which is expertly done by giving the local vicar what can only be described as the most explosive case of diarrhea, which is in itself a prize. But we also score a baking book, which leads into the second dream, a land filled to the brim with bread and croissants, which might be a celiac sufferer's worst dream, and they might need to join the vicar in the portal if they're not careful. The second dream is definitely a lot more tricky than the first, in that it requires a lot more finicking about than the last one. For one thing, Bapchester introduces the requirement of having a new toy companion, with this one being the large and rather terrifying rubber duck. It also involves heavily the concept of travelling across two different dreams, with there being a trading session where Lucy needs to keep trading He-Nan trading cards for even rarer cards. Perhaps the most devious puzzle is controlling the wind itself. Two of the puzzles in this section require the flow of wind to be controlled, which completely eluded me for what again could be considered an embarrassing amount of time. The solution is to think outside the box. Literally, outside of the dream box. Next to Lucy's bed is a fan, which you can move, which, you guessed it, changes the direction of the wind in her dreams. It's devious, but gosh darn do I love it. After unleashing our large rubber duck friend, who proceeds to demolish everything in its way to eat bread and absolutely destroy the bakery, Lucy managed to find the materials to make the bread needed to make peace with her dinosaur foe, ending the nightmare, but then causing her to splash into her third nightmare, drowning. Looks like we need to prepare for a third dream, to take a relaxing little break. But, honestly, what could be considered more relaxing than settling down with a nice cuppa and trying to solve a gruesome murder mystery that left a man beheaded? To clarify, the murder was the owner of Disneyland, who was supposedly murdered by his brother, although Lucy appears to have witnessed this, as it begins to be the source of her nightmares. Some of the clues don't seem to match up, however, but to progress further, we need to pop back into Lucy's imagination using a crabbing book which takes her to the seaside. Much like the second dream, Lucy needs to make changes to the environment, although this time it's done by filling up a glass of water and pouring it out to affect the tide. Now I'm sure this would have stumped me if I hadn't already clocked into Tall Story Games' devious puzzle methods. Folks, you can't catch me. Again. As a thank you present for Mr. Fumble for putting up with our shit, Lucy also gives the bear some chips, which acts as a fortunate distraction for those rat bastard seagulls. After helping a crab remove a rubber band, he gifts Lucy with a grappling hook. Or, well, a litter picker. But I feel a grappling hook has a better ring to it. Using it helps Lucy escape from the horrors of her third nightmare, but leads into a fourth nightmare where she's locked in a coffin.
Hang on, this is it's a coffin. Brilliant.
The fourth and final dream is set in a horror castle, which is accessed by using a horror comic. Unlike the previous dreams, there is no outside interference from objects impacting the dream itself, but inside is an Igor-esque manservant and a puzzle involving the most British activity ever known, making a cup of tea. It was at this moment I thought I was learning the greatest British secret to the greatest brew of tea through masterfully blending techniques. The way I read it was to add hot water, sugar, stir, then add cold water and stir, as if it was some sort of secret ritual. But as it turns out, I'm just an idiot, and couldn't read the instructions. And in my panic, I also wound up putting in the milk before the water, which I think makes me some sort of monster, and I'm half expecting the shambling remains of Lizzie herself to show up and behead me for high treason. To make amends, and to retain my head and my shoulders, I can confirm that the proper British way to make a cup of tea is to put the tea bag in, hot water, 2 sugars, stir, milk, stir, and serve a McVitie's chocolate digestive on the side. So please, don't hurt me. Upstairs is a pretty deviously confusing music puzzle, which involves rearranging the pipes to make the pianist play the correct music. And what better way to learn new music is by subscribing to Gronk OST's latest music stylings at the local pub. You thought I was going to say subscribe to his YouTube channel, didn't you? Well, I wasn't. He has enough. Subscribe to mine though, maybe? With a horn snagged, Lucy escapes the coffin, but faces against a person she expects started all this, waking up from a nightmare that she refuses to go back to. At this point, the dreaming gameplay of Lucy dreaming is no longer a thing. It's gone. Vamoosed. Ta-ta. Bye-bye. Instead, the remainder of the game is solving the murder of Fergus Figgington. But during this investigation, Lucy's dreaming takes a strange turn, as it turns out there was a third sibling, a woman known as Annabelle, who it turns out is Lucy's mother, who built the family house over the remains of the ruins of Disneyland, as well as the remains of her brother. Gross. I don't know about you guys, but I'm beginning to think that the woman who shoots off across the world shooting animals isn't exactly a very upstanding citizen, especially when she keeps the decapitated head of her brother in a secret room, or at least the costume head. In it, Lucy finds the missing security tape that all costumes have. The final portion of the game is wandering through the school halls, trying to work the tricky, outdated technology in order to play the security footage, which actually shows who the true killer is, Lucy herself, who accidentally decapitated her uncle with a pair of scissors when she was a wee babby. In a panic, Lucy faints, hitting her head and knocking herself unconscious. The game ends with Lucy dying, and we're treated to a Sierra Game Over screen. No, of course not, but Lucy is in hospital suffering from memory loss and completely forgetting everything over the last few days. On TV, a news report discusses how the original suspect of Fergus's death, his brother Horatio, has been found dead, supposedly after running with scissors, in an honestly sinister ending, as Lucy wonders if he really did it, before finally dozing off into a peaceful slumber. It's a sinister ending. But that doesn't exactly mar what is a fun and vibrant point-and-click adventure game. In fact, Lucid Dreaming is probably one of my favourites I've played in recent years, as it helps give a sense of that same feeling that arose for many of us during our childhoods playing older point-and-click adventure games like Monkey Island. I think Lucid Dreaming is one of the best examples of modern adventure games that absolutely nails the formula, absolutely infuriating players of complex and tricky puzzles. It's only right. Want to make sure you don't miss out on the next video? Then make sure you don't forget to subscribe to Noir Reservoir and click the little bell down there to be kept up to date on all future Noir Reservoir videos. And if you want to help support the channel, please consider liking the video and sharing it with any adventure game aficionados you think will appreciate it. And finally, why not consider following my Twitter for all the dank memes? I'm sure you won't regret it. Probably. So until next time, my friends, I'll catch you later.